Well, hello everybody. Hope you're doing okay. Meesimo's the name, top-notch DJ. I am super honored and stoked to be part of this whole project. As I mentioned, Chris Kaler's work. We were fast friends as soon as I met him, as part of the aforementioned MFA cohort. See if I can get this autofocused. There you go. Like if you saw his live stream last week, or whenever it was, he showed off his amazing thumbnails, and those alone, looking through his thumbnail sketchbook, is mind blowing and inspiring. So my thumbnails are not quite as tight, but it is part of an important part of the process. So we're gonna get into these awesome kits. I'm gonna go tool by tool and do a quick demo of each tool. But the exciting thing is that I was already organically using all these tools, except for one top secret, extra special new tool that I discovered over the course of this project, which quickly became my favorite tool. And I've shared it. I'm just talking to my buddy Tony recently about how I would bring these on crew when we're doing caricatures, and gifted it to a few different friends. So this is the ultimate. So we'll lead up to showing that one in action, but the Duo Point Flex is amazing. But everything else I was already using for years in making my comics, doing sketchbooks, which I always have sketchbooks. I recommend everybody draw in your sketchbook, draw something fun for yourself every day. You'll be amazed at what that might lead to just organically. So here's some Pentel sourced sketches right here. But I'm basically going to go through each tool and kind of show some quick tips, some previews of the quick tips and tricks that you can find on the Pentel Creator Community website. But I'm basically going to take you through my process creating a comic page from start to finish. So first you might be asking yourself, who the heck is this Meesimo guy? Why do we have to listen to him? Well, thank you for asking, but also I'll tell you how I went from feeling like a mutant in high school, not knowing what to do, trying to figure out how to draw with ballpoint pens and Sharpie markers, whatever I could find, blunt pencils. Myself being a blunt instrument at the time, but I went from feeling like a mutant to being able to draw Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles professionally. This is a recent variant cover for Godzilla X Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for IDW. Check it out. But this cover was actually drawn with some fancy Pentel markers, brush pens, and what have you. Also, you may have recognized some of these characters from the box itself. So super lucky to have such a cool partnership. So here you go. Hey, very fun. So I'm a professional comic artist and caricaturist, illustrator, and I'm here to show you how I've taken my love for Pentel inks and pens to show you my process. So here's a quick peek at a cover layout. I love using like 3x5 cards. So here is the rough draft for Turbo Hawk issue 2. And then here's the full final cover. So you can see the a vague idea. This is a pretty simple design, but a classic extreme close-up on Trad, the Blades of Vengeance himself, key member of the Turbo Hawk universe. I'm going to show you a few examples of getting from start to finish, but I'd like to show you, so the box itself comes with all these fancy, wonderful tools, but also, I love you guys so much, I included this signed print, hand signed. But I'm going to show you the process of this piece itself. So first, I start with very tiny thumbnails, maybe like 1 inch by 2 inches. Then I will do a 3x5 card. So with these, I'll put like the information on the back of the card, what's going to happen on that page, then really rough pencil sketch of what's going to happen. For the next step, I love these like 5x8. Of course, I have stickers all over the actual information, but like 5x8 sketchbooks. Get a nice toothy paper. Then I'll do like a mini version. So it's like 5.5 by 8 inches, 8.5 inches. It's basically 8.5 by 11 folded in half if you don't want to go for a whole sketchbook, but just get some good printing paper. So I'll do sometimes ink, sometimes just tightly penciled, kind of mini comic size version. And then I will jump from there, which is ironic because that's kind of how the final print size turned out. So you can really compare and contrast the tightness of the final. But here, typically most comics are drawn at 11 by 17. So here, changed a few things, details, but you can see the evolution from layout to final. And this page was drawn entirely with, I guess I did some point liners, but these are my kind of the four heroes of this package. '05 point liner, also love an '08, but for general use, these are my key components. Look at that. Good times. So that's kind of the short version. Now, I'll take you on a step by step. So I like to do like a few pages of layouts. Typically like to lay out the whole comic issue. Sometimes I'll figure out, if you're looking at your calendar, if you're really getting down to the nuts and bolts of creating comics, it's, maybe these are just layouts, maybe these are inks, but you figure out when your deadline is and how much time you have to do it, and then jump into layouts. So as I go, I like starting with the blue pencil, which we have some blue lead included in the Pentel kit. We got the regular graphite and the blue lead. Sometimes I do the first pass in blue, and then if I want to tweak anything, I'll come back with just the graphite. And these wonderful Graph Gear 300s really gets you going. Nice and detailed, and I like the '07 because '05 for fine details, but '07 you can kind of bridge the gap of super fine and a little bit larger, but still get some precise detail. Gonna keep an eye on the YouTube stream. If anybody wants to chime in over there, that's the place to go. We'll actually be having the chat, hopefully, over there. All right. Seeing some chatter over there. Wonderful. If you have any questions, throw them there, and as we go, I'll dip into the feed for any questions you might have about comics or the tools themselves. So I've got my layouts here. Get the focus going. So I try to keep them rough because really it's just shorthand to me. These I'm not, besides streaming like this to thousands of people out there, millions possibly. I generally don't plan on showing these to anybody else but myself. It's just kind of shorthand notes for me to know what the game plan is. As you can see, sometimes I know what's happening there. Sometimes I'll write a full kind of a screenplay style script for the comic. Sometimes I just have it in my head, so I only need to know the beats and the shapes that I'll fill in later. But this is an example. I like to keep them about this size. These sketchbooks are perfect for doing a full page of 9 at a time, and then check them off as you go. So the idea with doing thumbnails at this size, most of you know, but if you're just kind of getting into this, or even if you've been doing art and you like to just attack a page right out of the gate, kind of straight ahead animation style, that's all well and good. But the thing I love about doing the thumbnails is if you can read it clearly at this size, then it'll read clearly and work as a full size page. So like you can still tell the figures even at this small size. So focus in on this page because we're going to jump over and do some inking demo on this full size page. So what I love to do is start macro and go micro. So you start generally with your thicker brushes and get down to the finer. Point liners are great tech pens for doing the borders or doing fine line details, like the hairs on the arms here, like right out of a classic Sam Keith Max or Wolverine. It's like, the more tiny hairs, the better, but just add some texture and the contrast between textures. So you try to mix it up. So even though it's a busy scene, you've got like the stark graphic black of the hair shape. You got the metallic, surface of the armor. You've got the little hatchings for the hair. So even though it's a busy scene, the contrast between these different textures makes it read, nice and clear. And ideally, adding on the shading, especially with this guy in the top corner, just gives you a little bit more depth. And then the face. So some faces that have less lines, you can still add nice volume with a little bit of shading, whether it's watercolor, ink wash, or sometimes I'll add it in Procreate afterwards. Or you can do shading with the pencil. The pencil combo with the ink, looks nice. So even on a simpler cartoony sketch, here's me bringing in some of my caricature background into this Motley and Harv comic strip where I show up in their strip. I'm basically using the color brush for this whole sequence. And I love the color brush because you can do any type of these lines with the one tool. So I always like to start with the color brush As Kaler mentioned in his stream, these red bands. I also had a similar story where first time I got it, I had a mishap, but you want to make sure to remove the red bands before screwing it on and squeezing the chassis. Otherwise, you get ink splattered everywhere. But I also recommend having like some kind of a scratch board. So first like zero step, I'll backtrack slightly. When I draw characters, we have tear bars at the top of our sheets, and you have a bunch of leftover scrap paper. So I'd say use the whole buffalo. Like anytime you have scrap paper, you can use that for making notes. These are spoiler heavy notes for Turbo Hawk issue 4, but just to give you some insight, this is kind of my first step. It's like once I figure out the basic gist of the story, I make a note, one of these for each page. And then it's from these pages that I go to the next step, which is actually drawing. Sometimes you make tiny sketches of a character design you want to return to. But so I'll start with these as first step. Then you go to the thumbnails. And it's like second volume of thumbnails. And then it's the full size. So sometimes I've got some friends professionally that will do digital thumbnails, print them out onto Bristol board like this. Sometimes I'll scan in my tiny thumbnails, blow them up to this size, and print them out really lightly, blue line, and then ink on top of that. But in this case, I've just transferred it by eye, looking at this larger drawing Bristol board. So first step, dive right in with this awesome. Oh, I wanted to point out. So yes, this is done with mostly the duo tip. They can really get fine tip with the point liner and the fine tip of the duo point. But these fun, energetic borders are done with this guy. So this is great for doing all kinds of fun, you know, lines with your characters, give extra expression, but also the borders themselves. So you have these nice uniform borders at the top. But whoa, look at this. You got crazy action happening. So that's when it's appropriate. You want to throw in some more exaggerated borders. And that's one thing I love about caricature itself is you're not just exaggerating a person's face, you're exaggerating their body, you're exaggerating color, you're exaggerating line and line weight. So don't limit yourself just to one element when you're exaggerating your characters and caricatures. So speaking of caricatures, just shout out to ISCA, the International Society of Caricature Artists, where few years ago I won fourth place in the top 10 caricatures in the world because it's international. So this is an awesome caricature convention, super inspiring. I used this pen for some of my work on that trip. So the ISCA convention every year, usually in November, different place every year, but super inspiring to see all these different caricature artists. And it's really cool to see some of them utilizing comics in their caricatures. So shout out to them. I heard recently from my friend Kelly, who's on the board, about getting excited for the upcoming ISCACon in November. I think it's in Florida this year, and get excited about using some of these brush pens over there potentially. Would be awesome. So I love just diving right in with this big chunky chunky brush. So this, I'm a little bit looser than I might be in some cases, but when you're working on characters you know so well, you can almost draw them blindfolded. And these are my characters that I created over 20 years ago when I was 1 years old, probably. And so I can pretty much draw them inside and out, front to back. So one thing I love about comics is the style. There's not just one way to draw a comic, and even within artists, it's a great way to express yourself and tell a story, and you know, switch it up even within one comic. Especially if you're just doing your own thing. There's anywhere from Todd McFarlane, hyper detailed, to John Porcellino, where it's like just these simple, beautiful stories, but they're so human, anybody can relate to them, and the emotion still comes across, even though it's simple. So you have the Todd McFarlane, hyper hyper detailed. Look at all these, so many lines, and then you have somebody like John Porcellino, or you got Kate Beaton with these like wonderfully simple but human. So just an example of how you don't need to worry about drawing the best drawing for your comics. Comics are an amazing and resilient medium that can hold up to pretty much any style. So it's up to you. The more unique your own expressive style is, the better, I say. So Motley here is a generally cool, collected, laid back character. And here he is being confronted by a doppelganger of his in an alternate universe. I love the speed with and the kind of dry brush that you can get when the color brush is so expressive. So really, if I get a little bit higher up here, there you go. That's a little better. So, but still allows you to do simple, elegant lines like somebody like Wally Wood, classic sci-fi artist. Definitely a huge influence on me. So, as an only child, I was introduced to Wally Wood and Mad Magazine. Really blown away, especially by short story in early Mad called Super Duper Man. So it combined, superheroes, which I thought were cool, with cartooning and exaggeration. And that was in this book. I'm going to be giving quick glimpses of a lot of inspiring books throughout. So take a note, and maybe afterwards I'll post a link or maybe a list of all the artists and books that I'm mentioning. But this book is amazing because it shows the first appearance of Superman himself, but also has the parody version, Super Duperman, by Wally Wood. So under one cover, I got introduced to the superhero thing and the parody of that same thing. So it's kind of like mind was blown multiple ways at the same time. So I tend to pencil pretty loosely so that I can tweak things as I go. Here, I have the basic face shape, but I can adjust the expression as needed. I also recommend moving the page around as you're drawing for better leverage and more comfortable angles. So this is the color brush. So it's one of the most versatile tools you'll find this side of the actual brush, and I love it. So you can see how quickly I can throw down some ink and be extremely expressive, but also in the box here we have the amazing Stylo sketch pen, and this thing is like one of the most unique pens. This was also recommended to me. My friend Ben, who does amazing line work. So it's like you can see it's plastic, but basically like a kind of like a nib. So it has a little bit of give to it. And this one you can get really fine. This is Harv, who is the sidekick to Miley. I'm going to call it a question real quick. When would you use blue lead versus red? I like to use blue as the initial rough sketch, and then I will tighten it in with either red or graphite as kind of like the fixing, tweaking layer so that you can differentiate what you're updating. Excellent question. So I might lay down, I'll do a quick example. Get out some, might lay down some blue. Actually, I have those drawn up here. So red, as you can see starkly, I know immediately which ones I've finished. But even if I want to come in with regular graphite, say like, oh, I want to kind of tweak that arc, make sure that belly protrudes just enough. Maybe this one's to go out further. Bring the feet there, so you can clearly see what's updated versus what's the initial first pass. So, excellent question. Axis Jones, thank you. Yeah, stylo, very underrated, and it's really versatile. All right. Yeah, I love this kind of fine line. So the reason I got into this kind of pens initially, I came in the mid 80s, late 80s, to where I started actually noticing, different comic artists by name. Why do I like this issue of X-Men more than this other issue of X-Men, for instance? And a lot of the times, it was because of the artist, especially at that period. The artist was this guy, Arthur Adams. So this guy's crazy details. And so these early X-Men, it's like so fine. You can tell he's doing it with some sort of a tech pen. But, how does he get those fine details? And Terry Austin was his main inker at the time, who also inked John Byrne famously. And I feel like he elevated any of the artists that he worked with. But Arthur Adams definitely had the juice himself, so he was a fun kind of a satirical how to draw comics the Art Adams way, and it's only 2 pages long, sadly, but it's hilarious. But amazing detail. So I'm looking at tech pens, trying to figure out how can I draw like this amazing, fine, detailed artist. So just kept on looking for him, trying different variations until I found, first the point liners. I guess I not first, but those are the ones I settled on because of their quality is so great. So and you can get a full set of them. But this one is like the next level up. So if you really want fine, very specific but nuanced line work, I love getting into that noodly kind of underground, kind of hatching and giving these kind of under shading. So I love being expressive with the characters, expressive with the lines. It's kind of nice, clean hatching marks. These pens are really wonderful for. But these are great because you can recharge, refill the cartridges, get these on their own. It's refillable. Great tips. So these are extra special for the more nuanced, detailed stuff. So seeing artists like Arthur Adams and Terry Austin really inspiring. It's like, how do I do that? And then you realize who did they look at when they were drawing? You see like Bernie Wrightson, Michael Golden, that fine, clean line and clean storytelling. But also like Franklin Booth, classic illustrator. You look at Clouds, The background is these Arthur Adams comics. Definitely see a through line to somebody like Franklin Booth, Joseph Clement Cole. So I also love to do when I'm doing a comic page, different sizes. You want to kind of be aware that all your figures on the page are not the same. That can get, unless it's a repetitive sequence for impact, you want to mix it up. So here, their heads, are a little smaller in the bodies, and then we zoomed in a little bit here, and then back out here. Sometimes I love doing a big extreme close up. And you want to play with your panels and layouts as well. Love these big open mouth characters, but you can see some of those fine details I love to get into with the cross hatching and the shading. So here, got these kind of dangling small panels, and then a big, nice open panel. So really, as long as the storytelling comes through, don't limit yourself to how you want to tell your story. These I was, exaggerating for effect because they're recounting a tale of these characters in another dimension. So you've got a crazy back panel with all these creatures, fighting, and then in the front, the kind of the foreground with these panels, you've got you know clean rectangular and characters having a conversation about some of the more wild events. Good establishing shots. I love that kind of overlapping panel. You see different artists. Sam Keith was a favorite. Um, an artist I've been a fan of for a long time, but only recently got tuned into a comic. His comics work is Jonathan Weishak, who, really wild stuff. But he did this comic recently called Cul-de-sac, not to be confused with Richard Thompson's classic comic strip Cul-de-sac, but Cul-de-sac by Mike Carey and Weishak is really like wild, and you can see him using a brush pen or whatever he can reach. I think he's using actual brushes and paints. So he's an artist I feel like is slept on to some degree, just because anybody that sees his work is blown away and loves it. But I think still could use some, or still more people need to learn about him. Yeah, his hatching, his splatter, storytelling, everything is off the chain. And nice guy. Got to meet him recently in C2E2. He was tabling next to another legend, Eric Talbot, who started doing turtle stuff and sidetracked into tattooing, and now he's coming back doing more shows, doing these awesome sketchbooks. Hopefully, he does some more sequential stuff coming up. But he's another all-time great stylist, singular style. I love these kind of sweeping shapes. So again, contrasting the flat graphic black of the hair and the hatching details of this bunny character. Love a good spiral. And then just down at the bottom here, just playing with texture, showing some kind of designy contrast. And then, throughout this, there'll be dialogue interspersed. So that's the stylo. Love it, especially love combining it with the color brush. That's kind of my whole spiel is I love combining disparate styles, disparate tools, whether it's cartoony characters with, more realistic lighting or hyper detailed hatching with a simple character design. Big fan of that. You might have a really cartoony character, but then you hyper stylize it with fine detail or exaggerate the coloring. And it's funny how some of the most detailed comics looks best with like flat color. Sometimes you see a highly detailed comic artist and the colorist tries to go ham with, you know, extra shading and you end up losing a lot of that line work. So I just love the kind of tapered. There's one kind of, let's see, I could fit this in. I love doing this where you gradually get into a smaller, and these brush pens are great for tapering in this kind of shading. So this, like I first noticed it with Sam Keith, but you could see him picking up pieces from Frazetta's comic book inking, which, even though obviously he's known for his legendary paintings, Frazetta's comic work is pretty substantial. And then Bernie Wrightson, of course. And one somebody currently doing it to great effect is Kelly Jones, who's been doing these awesome Dracula books with Matt Wagner. That's like some of his best work to date. So that's one he's had his mainstream success, but it's like a late career highlight is Kelly Jones's work on these Batman graphic novels. Yeah, Nate Van Dyke, he's in that same realm with Wayshak, like a little bit tighter, but he does some awesome stuff. Thank you for chiming in, Axis Jones. But even people with simpler styles, Brett Bean and Scotty Young, I've seen them use like the color brush as well as the pocket brush to great effect. So you can get clean, cartoony styles, but also loose, Frazetta-esque inks, which leads me to my next favorite, the Duo Point Flex. They have this nice fat. So there's other brush pens that have dual points like this, but to me, this is the best. The fat tip is really uh, it's really solid. So some kind of start to lose their form after a little bit, but this one, to me, just holds its form really quick. I also love combining flat graphic shapes with noodly textured rendering, which this pen is made for. So this, like, there's a lot of international brush pens, but this tip is really super fine, super flexible, and it's amazing. Just like like butter, so smooth, but like just great line variation. Wonderful for hatching, but also I can file this down and then get thicker at the end. So like, what's so great about, like, if you only have one pen, you can get this one. Also, if you only want one pen, you can get this one. You can do everything with these two, and they work well in conjunction with each other. So having these two working in tandem is great, but we're using these variation of these of thickness for the point liners. So 08 you can do outlines with, and then 05 you can do little details, and then going in even tighter, the 03, and if you have extra X-ray specs, the 01 and the 003, so the 0.03 of that, you can actually put hair follicles. So these, especially when you're doing smaller work, say you want to ink your thumbnails and get really tight, I mean, it's just wonderfully microscopic. So I love starting macro and just getting finer and finer as you go. Another all-time great that very inspiring for line work, Mobius. Look at that. His work, like, it's otherworldly. It's like it somehow feels familiar. It's like feels like a dream world that we've all been to. But so he's another one where early on I got to go to Paris for a family vacation, and I dragged my parents over to Angoulême. We just happened to be there at the same time as the Angoulême festival, and we got to see. I think Robert Crumb was the guest of honor that year, but they had a bunch of Mobius work on display. I first learned about another favorite. So here's another. Just you could just look at these all day. So these are very inspiring for his line work. But as I mentioned, you don't need to be that detailed. You can do Mignola, and he's a great one to look at for clarity. So you could do a whole comic in that style just with the thick end of this brush. I've also used these for live caricature. They hold up well. You can do it's just thick enough. You get great line variation, but still the tip is great for fine details. I've even used these for live caricature and then gone on top of it with airbrush. The nice thing with that is then you can go in with your trusty Presto whiteout pen and do highlights right on. So this one's great. We're coming back in on your comic pages. Surprisingly versatile. And then also live paintings, live caricatures. And use these many different techniques. I've got an example here. So Chris had mentioned that we first saw each other's work and became friends at the MFA program through UHeart. And this is an example using CF Payne's technique. And shout out to CF Payne. Today's his birthday. Happy birthday, Chris Payne. But using this technique, I actually threw the inks down with the Duo pen. So let's say you want to do a nice elaborate full color cover. Doing the Duo pen, you roll on some ultra matte medium with some pigment, some acrylic pigment, with a brayer, printer's roller brayer. You can go back on top of that with this, and presto, you got some highlights. So this is great. Let's say I didn't like the way Motley's expression turned out after all. So you can very concisely, and it's a real nice pure layer, but you can also do some good hatching here. Kyle Baker, I always thought did a good use. He would come in, and growing up, I was like, how did he get some of those lines? Sam Keith too, and they're coming in with white acrylic, but you can go on top and get some good highlights, add some depth. Uh, for example, Kyle Baker's "You Are Here," amazing cartooning. He did ink this traditionally, but then it was digitized and colored digitally. But you can still see the ink line on that face. But one of the all-time world's greatest cartoonists. Like those faces, incredible. So he's a great example of mashing up caricature and comics. We're getting into the home stretch already, which is pretty unbelievable. But I thank everybody for checking us out. Going to wind down a little more inking on this panel. But this kit is designed basically to be what I didn't know that I needed as a kid making my own comics in high school. Me and my best friend Troy, back in the day, making comics, Xeroxing them, photocopying them, selling them to our classmates. Me and the original Surreal Studios crew, what we call ourselves. Um, just kind of using whatever materials we could find, and just kind of having to deal with what we have. But this is a chance for me to design something for my current usage, for other friends and comic book drawing colleagues. To sorry, I keep covering up with my dumb head there, but it's like here's a chance to design something that I could have needed, could have used back in the day, but now here's your chance. Next generation can use these kits, make their own comics. And I hope you share them all with us at the Creator Collective. I'd love to see what you all are creating and hear what you think about these tools. I basically put together a kit that can, you replicate and get close to the comics that I love and aspire to. So you can get more experimental with the like Toby Cypress here and this awesome Land of the Dead, written by my mentor, storytelling mentor, Brian McDonald, one of the all-time great storytelling masters and teachers, as well as writers. Toby Cypress, amazing artist. This is really a great book because it talks about the art of storytelling, but it's an amazing story, multiple stories in itself. So you can do experimental, energetic work like this with the colored brush. You can do nice and clean inking like the great Jeff Smith. This is one of the all-time graphic novels. I love the black and white version because you can really see his amazing line work, brush work. So ironically, you can do that same quality of line with the colored brush, but also with this guy. Some of the background details are perfect for the tech pens or the Duo Flex. This is a collection of David Mazzucchelli's work. A lot of these are from his self-published stuff, but this kind of chunky storytelling goes back to my thoughts about, draw in whatever style suits you, and you can make some cool comics. I think this one you can find in print in English, but the Big Man story. But look at this. He's a great example of being influenced by Jack Kirby, but also going into a more idiosyncratic direction with it. So these you could do with that color brush. This is the comics and manga kit, so I'd be remiss if I didn't share some of my favorite manga books. This is a masterpiece. The movie's great, but look at these wonderful, mark making. These you could do something of this nature with, the point liners and the stylo. There's 2 volumes of this. I've got both. Incredible. Look at that. Of course, Akira. So these are like the old school. As I mentioned before, John Porcellino, like beautiful, simple, deceptively so, but uh, really great emotional impact. Another favorite, Jillian Tamaki. She's a great one for just formal experimentation, wonderful storytelling, great variation of line. One of my artistic heroes. Another real quick fun one as far as styles and out there. Jim Food, hometown hero from the St. Louis Midwest region. So it all comes back to if you want to create comics, you can do it all with this kit. There's more tips and tricks uh, if you get the kit on the Creator Collective. But I thank you all for joining me in this wonderful adventure, and I look forward to seeing you posting everything that you're creating with these tools and beyond. Let us know what you think. So thanks to Chris K and the Pentel team. Till next time, I am Meesimo, and I look forward to hearing from everyone. If you have any questions that didn't make it on the air today, look for us in the Creator Collective. I've got an account there, and it's a great little community. So we'll be doing ongoing posts about more tutorials and more examples of art in comics and manga. So I hope you join and share your work.